There is a translation of that line in today's gospel, which one could argue is the pivotal line in the passage. And it goes like this: "Get out of my way because you're thinking like everybody else and not like God." Isn't that our problem today? We have so many people who are blabbing at us with God-like authority. But aren't they really just thinking like everybody else rather than thinking like God? Being served instead of serving, winning versus working, rights versus responsibility, being loved versus loving, servitude, work, responsibility, and love. These things are not bargains. They are not something we earn, or frankly, we have a right to. They are things that we are freely given by God, and that God wants us to freely give to others. Poor Peter. He only wanted to tell Jesus that God would not let him suffer. He only wanted Jesus to stop talking so depressingly. He only wanted to say that bad things do not happen to good people. He only wanted to protect Jesus, to make him feel better, to reassure him. And then he got shot down. He got shot down because he missed the facts about Jesus. Even though Peter believes that Jesus is the Son of God, and even though he believes that Jesus is the Messiah, the promised one, even though he is willing to obey Jesus and follow him anywhere, Peter misses the fact that God's law is different than human law. God thinks and works differently than we do. So differently, in fact, that Jesus, as the Son of God, had to die. Jesus had to die for us. Had to die for us to save us from our sinfulness. Had to die for us to show us that death really has no rule over us. Had to die to show us how God really works. And then Jesus said to his disciples, "If any of you want to be my followers, you're going to have to forget about yourself. You must take up your cross and follow me. If you want to save your life, you have to destroy it. But when you give up your life for me, that's when you're going to find it." We, as good Christians, as disciples, we are in the dying business. It's our duty. It's our job. And most of all, it is our need to die. God wants it for us. And we need it to happen to us if we really are to discover what living is all about. God wants us to die, not in the destructive sense, but in the sense of forgetting about our needs and our wants and our desires, and becoming more concerned about the needs, wants, and desires of others. When Christ calls us to follow him, he calls us to die. So, have you died lately? Have you given up something for God? Have you given up something important to you for someone else? For some poor person? For some insignificant one? For some pest who irritates you? Have you given up something really important, something you really valued, so that some wretch who did not deserve it could enjoy it? That's exactly what Jesus did for us on the cross. And that is what Jesus wants us to do for ourselves and for others. And for him, when he tells us, if you want to be my followers, you must forget yourselves. You have to take up your cross and follow me. Get out of my way because you think like everybody else and not like God. Are you in the way or are you on the way? That's a really important question. A question upon which our life, our death, and our rebirth hangs. Are we in the way of Jesus or on the way that he's prepared for us? Do we think like everybody else or do we begin to think like God? Jesus begs us to stop thinking like the world thinks, to stop thinking like humans think, and to start thinking like God thinks. That's why we're here today, huh? So that we might think like God thinks, the way Jesus thinks, to learn what the mind of Jesus is, so that we might put on that mind to become the kind of person who actually does really strange things like blessing those who mistreat them or loving those who hate them. Our way, my friends, is the way of Christ. Our way is the way of the cross, the way of emptying ourselves so that we might be filled, the way of humbling ourselves so that we might be exalted, the way of opening our arms to the power of death so that we might be raised to a newness of life. Are you decreasing so that he might increase in you? Are you in the way of Christ or on the way of Christ?